ಡಿಸ್ಪ್ಲೇ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ.
ಅದು ಸೆಟಪ್ ಮಾಡಿಬಿಟ್ಟಿರಿ ಹಂಗೆ. ಓಕೆ ನಾನು ಕರಿತೀನಿ. ಇಲ್ಲ ಏನು ಮಾಡಬೇಕಲ್ಲ, ಏನು ಮಾಡಬೇಕಿಲ್ಲ ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಚೇಂಜ್ ಮಾಡೋದು ಏನು ಮಾಡೋದು. ಓಕೆ ನಾನು ನಿಮಗೆ ಇನ್ಫಾರ್ಮ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀನಿ. ಓಕೆ. Okay, good afternoon. So for the online students today, the YouTube live, it's not there because there is some technical issue. So however the recorded video will be uploaded later on YouTube. Not for you guys, for those who wanted to watch the class on YouTube. So coming back in today's class, we'll be discussing two important aspects. One is your paper 2, part A and part B. But this will be brief because since we have already discussed paper 1 and many elements here will repeat again, but I will show you what is the difference. Then we will be going into the aspect of the starting, that is we will be starting with part A. So in today's class we will be discussing what do we mean by a political thought, okay. Then we also have to understand the term what is a political philosophy and what is the relation between political thought and political philosophy. Then what is political science. So when we use the term philosophy and science, how do they differ, okay. And then we will be also understanding bit of Western political thought, okay. So what are the features of Western political thought, why it is called as Western political thought. So that will be of today's part, okay. So once you understand what is a thought, philosophy, science, then we will be able to understand the ideas, that is of what Greek political thought, that is Socrates, Plato and Aristotle. So this will be what we will be doing in today's class, not this one, that one, that we will do tomorrow. Now coming to paper 2. So again I said there are two parts, right, A and B. So what is there in A broadly, if you take comparative politics. So in the name only it is there. What do you mean by comparative politics? We have to compare the political systems of different countries. So then do we compare every country? No, not necessary. Or currently Israel issue is happening, should we compare? They won't ask such country specific, okay, but they are going to ask broadly. So you can say how the political system in the West, it differs from the political system in the East. So broad comparison, you can take India as an example of a developing society. How do political parties function here and how do political parties function in Western countries? So you can see in India we have a lot of political parties which lack internal democracy, okay, they are not democratic within. So for example, how the party president is chosen, maybe the son of the person who created the party. And in Indian political parties there is also that they retain lot of traditionality, okay, they are not completely modern. So when we say the current democracy, it is a modern mechanism in the sense we are living in a modern age. And what is the modern values based on? Liberty, equality, etc., and merit should be one of the ground. But here you can say the political parties are a bit traditional in the sense, you can see one, there is lack of internal democracy. Second one, they seek votes based on caste, religion, etc. So identity based politics is still very strong, not developmental politics. And the third one, we can also see the nature of coalitions, okay. If you compare in the East, in the West, there are countries like Italy, Germany, etc. Here the coalition is mainly based on ideology, okay, they have a common ideological framework, they come to what you can say form alliance even before elections. But in India you can see, especially from 1990s till we can say the year 2000 or 1999, we had more of immature coalitions, or we can also call it as negative coalitions. What do you mean by negative coalitions? They used to form coalition after the election results. And what is the purpose of forming coalition? They wanted to capture political power. And here the main criteria will be power, it is not ideology. So even if they belong to opposite ideologies, they will form the government to keep somebody else out of power. For example, you take VP Singh government, the National Front government. it had both the BJP and the CPI on the same alliance. Okay, you can see BJP is ideologically different, CPI is ideologically different. You can never imagine BJP and CPI joining hands, but they joined hands in 1990s. Why? Their common enemy that time was Congress. They wanted to keep out Congress. Or you take Karnataka only. If you take this Kumaranna and if you take, let us take Siddaramaiah, personally they don't have good equations, but still they formed government in 2018. Why? Both of them wanted to keep BJP out of power. So this we call it as a negative coalition culture. Okay. In the West, it's not that it is not there, it is there. In Italy you will find this kind of political parties, but largely in West the coalitions is more matured. So there they have a common political program, pre-poll alliance, not post-poll alliance. In India also you can see that developed post 1993 when Atal Bihari Vajpayee and his NDA government, and alternately you have the one more poll UPA which was found, and Manmohan Singh was the PM for 10 years in that regard. So that will compare. Similarly, we are going to compare the constitution. Okay, if you take Indian federalism and if you take American federalism, now many people told Indian federalism is quasi-federal. Okay, this was an opinion of, let us take Ivor Jennings or Casey Ware in that regard. So you have Granville Austin, one more scholar. I think you would have read in polity also. Granville Austin calls India as cooperative federalism. So he says that no, these Ivor Jennings and what Casey Ware, they are looking at the concept of federalism mainly from a Western lens. Okay, means how do you compare and tell we are quasi-federal? Means you are comparing against some benchmark, and who is that benchmark? US. So that means why you have to compare with US and tell what is our model? So that is where you have one more scholar called as Alexandrovic, who says that India's federalism is sui generis, means it has its own emergence, and that is what even Granville Austin says, that if you compare and see the historical evolution of India and historical evolution of America is very different, and that is why India went for more centralized government, where more powers with the union government, because it was needed at that point of time. So that is what we say, comparative politics. So what we are going to compare? Political parties, social movements, okay, like women movements. How do women movements occur in India? Why women movements are very weak in developing societies? Why women movements are very strong in developed world? We have to go into the reasons for it. Or you can take human rights movements in that regard. In the Western countries, human rights regime is strong. Why it is strong? Why in developing societies there is less concern for human rights? So it's not that every Western country is good with respect to human rights, but in their societies they have a high value for human rights. Institutions are pretty strong to protect human rights, but you can see in developing societies that has not happened. One of the reasons they say democracy is institutionalized in the West, whereas democracy is not yet institutionalized. For example, you take China. In China you have violations against the Uyghur Muslims who resides there, but you can see that China from before do not have a good track record of maintaining protection of human rights. So we need to compare and see that why in the West and East there is a difference. Then we will be also looking into the comparison of what you have certain theories here. Comparative politics is only a subject. So you have traditional ways of studying. So how do we bring comparison? So before they used to compare on basis of what? There is one approach which is called as philosophical approach. Understanding Indian philosophy, understanding the Western philosophy. Then there is something called as legal rational approach. Means you will study the rules and laws brought by India and similarly laws brought by the Western state. These were all some traditional like historical approaches there, etc. Now there was criticism. Why there were criticism? They used to say first of all, now if you want to understand Indian politics, you cannot understand Indian politics just by studying its constitution. If you tell I have understood Indian politics just by understanding constitution, means your understanding is very poor. Because in India, politics is not completely formalized. Everything does not happen according to the constitution. Constitution may say one thing, but in reality politics there are many other factors. Okay, caste plays a key role, religion plays a key role. So if you want to make a study on Indian politics, and if you tell you are not going to make a study on caste, obviously your study is not relevant. So that is when non-traditional or modern approaches started to emerge. So that is what we say political sociological approach, political economic approach, political cultural approach. So one common thing you can see, behind every word politic, there is one extra word attached, economy, sociology, So this is a new trend in sense 1960s and 70s. We don't treat now political science and sociology as separate. There is an overlapping region that we call as political sociology. So there is a saying that there is no politics without society, and there is no society which does not have politics. They are interrelated. So your understanding will be very poor, especially in developing world, if you don't understand these societies. Okay. Then you can ask a question, then what is the difference between political sociology and sociology? The difference is that in sociology it is more about, the concern is about study of society. In political science it is more about concern of study of state. Okay, that is why there is a person called as Garner who said political science begins and ends with the state. Main concern of political science is state, we are not bothered about everything. But you cannot rule out the fact that there is, the state does not operate in vacuum. State is always influenced by whom? Society. State is part of society. So that was a new field which developed. So they told, without understanding societies in developing countries, you cannot understand their political system. That is why political sociology. Political economy. So you can see state plays a very key role in taking economic decisions. You have capitalist state, you have communist state. Especially during Cold War, there was competition between capitalism versus communism, and they wanted to study that what kind of policies are brought by the communist state, what kind of policies are brought by the capitalist state. That we call it as what? Political economic approach. Political culture. So we can see India is also democracy, America is also democracy, but their culture is completely different. Okay, caste is not a key role in the American political system, but in India, yes, it is. In our political culture, you can see people will vote, based on money, alcohol, etc. There the culture might be different. So to understand the politics, you have to understand the culture. What is the culture of these societies? That is why it is called as what? Political cultural approach. So that is what we are going to see, that how the study of comparative politics has shifted from traditional times to modern era. So largely these will be the topics we will be studying. Then the other part we will be studying is that we will be studying bit about this, what you can say, the nature of the state in capitalist societies and the nature of the state in communist societies. So this is again nothing but related to your Cold War chapter. There is one separate chapter called as Cold War, it will overlap. So if you look at usually capitalist societies, okay, like for some of you who are not, still, if you don't know what is capitalism and what is communism, in simple sense capitalism means what? It is private ownership or a free market economy. What do you mean by a capitalist state? A state which does not intervene in economy. Minimal state it is also called as. What do you mean minimal state? The state will perform only minimal functions. What kind of functions? Security, maintaining law and order, protecting individual rights. State does not go into the ambit of providing education, health, etc. Because capitalist state derives from the ideology of, because in part A I told you there are different ideologies. There is an ideology called as neoliberalism. It derives from neoliberalism. So when you understand neoliberalism, you will understand why the capitalist state, they don't interfere in, they don't want to bring welfare functions. The opposite to that is what? Communism. So communism derives the idea from Karl Marx in that regard. So in a communist state, in general, we say a state which usually performs welfare functions. So you can see the Cold War, they was divided between communism and capitalism. So we need to understand the nature of the states, the functions of the state in the capitalist world, and what is the functions of the state in communist world. It is not that both capitalism and communism are perfect. They have their own set of benefits, they have their own set of criticism. But post 1991, the neoliberal state started to become dominant. Why? Because Soviet Union disintegrated, and the disintegration of Soviet Union raised question marks whether communism is sustainable or not. And many claimed it is a victory of the West over Russia, and that is why you can see America started to become the dominant power in the world from a bipolar world order. What is bipolar? World divided into two blocks. Power is distributed between two blocks, the Soviet bloc and the USA or the Western bloc led by USA. But after Soviet Union disintegrated, Russia became a separate country, but they were very weak. So now the world was dominated by only one superpower, that is America. And America dominated how? They dominated in different means. They dominated through ideology, they dominated through controlling the global economy. Dollars is the global currency. So you can see military, America has the highest military budget in the world. Even if you add up the military budget of the next 8 countries, they don't match up the military budget. And America controls institutions, IMF, World Bank. Take UN, United Nations, where it is located, headquarters, New York. Where is the headquarters of IMF and World Bank? Washington DC. So America became what? The global policeman. Okay, so they become a power. And America is not just a power in terms of material terms, they also dominated the thinking of the people in the world. So for example, if you, let us take, you open your TV and you want to show your children cartoon. So you will see Disney produces cartoon. Disney is an American company and Disney promotes American values. So in a way they control the ideology in that regard. So for example, we see Captain America, there is no Captain India, there is no Captain Russia. It is Captain America. Why it is only Captain America? That is what we say, na? That is how, this is what we say, power being exercised in an invisible way. So for example, if you see when I was young, when I used to watch a lot of English movies, Bond, etc. I used to always think all Russians are drug addicts, drug mafia, etc. Partly true, but it is not that America is completely free of drug thing. Why that perception is there? Hollywood, Hollywood produced movies which most of the, even today if you see most of the villains is Russians. Bond movie you see, now it is Chinese, they are moving towards China. Before it used to be Russia. So that is what we say, because you will study in part A something called as hegemony. It is a concept given by Gramsci. He says that if you want to dominate over others, you don't need to dominate them physically, control their minds, that is enough. So that is how the American hegemony was established. They dominate world. So you can, if you, I think anybody from Andhra Pradesh, okay. So in Andhra, I don't know, it might be what you can say symbolic, because I have a lot of friends from Andhra. They want to do 2 things. One, they want to write civil service, become IAS. Second one, they want to go to America. They want to write there, want to go. Why you want to go to America? Because America is the, what you can say, the dreamland, the American way of life which is there. But if you actually look deep, tell me in one area where America ranks 1, except that military, etc. There is one movie also in Hollywood, that fellow, when some girl will ask a professor, American professor, question saying that we are the greatest country in the world. So he will tell in what ways we are the greatest country. He will tell only in 2 ways. One, we have the highest military budget. Second one, we are the country which believes that these angels are real. So if you look at their spending on education, their spending on health, or if you look at America's, is it okay, fine, equality? No. It is the Scandinavian countries which rank 1, Finland, Norway, etc. But it is America which is a symbol for the world. We say the American dreams which is there. It is a dreamland where anybody can achieve anything. So this is what we say, it is an ideological power built by America in that years. And you can see America operates in many ways. If you go here, few steps, you have KFC, McDonald's, Popeye. These are all American companies. Today they have changed our culture, right? Even today, India is moving towards fast food culture. If you see McDonald came out with a fast food culture because the American lifestyle is based on what? No, you have to work, capitalism in that regard. And if you go to KFC, will they give you water? If you go to Indian hotels, first thing they will do is that they will give you water. Go to any American restaurant, they will never give you water. They will give you Pepsi, buy Pepsi. If you ask, they will give, but they will never give it on their own. Why? It is completely commercialized. This is how we can say that America has altered the world. It is not only that, that is why we say that is how America became the dominant power. So we will be comparing that why socialism collapsed. Okay, there is a saying like, some say that Karl Marx was considered as God for some sections of society. Some said that he is a God who failed. Why? Because communism collapsed, the dream of Karl Marx did not come true. But what some say is that it was not Karl Marx who failed, it was the followers of Marx who didn't implement communism in the right way, that is why communism collapsed. Then you will study about new scholars like Thomas Piketty. Have you heard about him? He is a Nobel laureate, okay, for economics. So he has written certain books saying that this capitalism, what we say, it's not as good as what the Americans are projecting to be, and he has brought analysis to it. So we can say today we are living in a world, okay, you can say this would be right. We are living in a world today where we have broader freeways but narrower viewpoints, taller buildings but we have shorter tempers, and we can say today we are increasing GDP but we are decreasing on equity. So today we can say our population is growing but human values are lowering. The reason is that there are certain problems with capitalism. Capitalism, we can say, it creates highlands of prosperity surrounded by what? Oceans of poverty. It means growth of only some, the rich in that regard. So today there is a backlash which is happening on capitalism. You can see today there is a threat to the American hegemony. It comes from China. Now China is saying that we have a new economic model where we have also grown in that regard. That is what we said we are going to compare. We are going to compare the different economic models, the so called Beijing model which is there. Or on the other side you have the Washington consensus. If you have read in economics you will read about Washington consensus. If economics is not done, here we will be reading about something called as Washington consensus. Washington consensus was an agreement between World Bank, IMF and the American Treasury where they decided the global economy should move towards a neoliberal model of economy. Okay. So if you see your IMF and World Bank, they operate in the same way that how the Americans want. Okay. So have you heard about IMF, International Monetary Fund? What is the main function that IMF does? They don't just provide loans, they provide conditional loans. Okay. What do you mean by a conditional loan? There are certain conditions attached. So let us think you have a daughter, you want to get your daughter married and you need a loan. So you go to IMF, I need a loan. Okay, how much you need? Tell I need 5 lakhs. Okay, granted, take. Interest, nominal interest rate, market rate, what is there? You are very happy if giving 5 lakhs loans. So you are about to take the money. They will tell before you take the money one condition. So you will tell what? So you get your daughter married to whomever we show. We are going to choose the husband for your daughter. That is how it's symbolic, means they will give you loans but you have to restructure your economy based on what conditions the IMF puts. Like for example, Sri Lanka has borrowed from IMF recently. Now IMF will put conditions to Sri Lanka. Okay. And most of the times there is a criticism that IMF conditions are mainly derived on the principles of neoliberalism, free market, open up your economy, allow FDI to come. There is both positive and negative. Positive, you can see India did improve after LPG reforms, but there are cases where Argentina crisis, Brazil crisis, the Asian crisis where they failed in that regard. And many say what will happen when you allow unregulated FDI, means if you don't regulate FDI. See what happens in that capitalism is free market, but you cannot have complete free market, you need some kind of regulation of the market. Otherwise there will be a disadvantage to the smaller players. Okay, let us think for example, now I am traveling in a flight, I suddenly on a flight by luck I met Mr. Ambani. Now Ambani will ask me what are you doing, I will tell I am teaching in an academy. What are you teaching? I am teaching political science. And how is UPSC as an investment? It is nice, it is growing, mushrooming. So I will tell okay fine, you do one thing, I will give you 100 crores capital, you run the academy. Let us open Ambani Civil Service Academy. You run, but you capture the market. Now I have money, I have 100 crores. Okay, and he will tell you pay me after 10 years, no issue. You take your time, we will encourage you. Now how to capture the market? I have 100 crores. Now you have inside, you have IS Baba, you have different other academies. So first I will try to pull the faculties, offer double salary, come to us. Students 2 years free, take, attend class, any class, 2 years it is free for you, completely free, no 1 rupee fees you will not pay. Now automatically what will happen, our people, you know, right, you give one free, namgu irli, nam tammangu irli, so now obviously the admissions into other academies will start to filter out. So I will start getting the numbers in that regard. After 2 years, you know, different academies will close down, because you cannot run an academy if it is not profitable. Now I am the only major player in the market. Now I will tell you, pay 50,000 rupees fees, no longer free and all, enough. So what I have done, I have monopolized the market. Okay, this is what you call as predatory pricing, purposefully quote law. Now you need to understand who can do it. It is the multinational companies who can do it, because they have business in many areas. Like Ambani, for him 100 crores is not a big deal. He loses here, it's okay, fine, he can manage. So what they will do, they will enter into different sectors, and that is what we can say Jio. Initially they told 4G, enjoy, take free, but now it is charged once they captured the market, or they were able to make inroads into the market. So this is what happens when developing countries, they take loans from IMF and they allow FDI. Many of the domestic companies, or what we can say, the small scale sectors, they will close down, they will see job loss. So that is the concern in many of these countries, that when they take loan from IMF, that you know they will be compelled to open up their economies. That can have long term implications on whom? The vulnerable sections in those societies. So this part will be mainly discussing these areas, a comparative effort to analyze how things work in West, how things work in developing societies. Then we will be going into globalization. So I think globalization is also there in your GS paper 1, if you take, right, I think in society part you have globalization, and here we will be also reading globalization. There is no difference there and here. And if you take your that yellow color book, what is that, Contemporary Global Politics, there is a chapter on globalization in that book, and that is a very good chapter. If you read, you get a multiple analysis of, you know, how globalization works, etc. So here they have given in the syllabus globalization, its impact on developed world and developing societies. So we will be starting with understanding what is globalization, why did globalization occur, and then we are seeing what was the impact of globalization in the developed world and what was the impact of globalization in developing societies. We have to look from both angles, positives and negatives. So if you actually look at globalization, maybe for from 1950s till or from 1980s till 2010, it benefited the Western world. You know, they were able to make inroads into Indian market, you know, Chinese market, etc. But now the ulta is happening. They are facing the negative impact of globalization. Why? What is globalization? Globalization is free movement of goods, people, ideas, transcending national boundaries. Now what is happening, because developing societies or developing countries are more cost effective. What do you mean by cost effective? To run a business in America, you have to pay higher labor costs. The same business, if you shift to countries like India, China, the labor cost is cheap. Outsourcing is happening. So many jobs are coming from developed world to developing world. So this is having a negative impact in the Western world. How? You can observe that there is increasing growing of right wing groups in the West. Okay, like Donald Trump in America, or if you take in Sweden, you had a far right prime minister. In France, you had this political party led by Mary Le Pen. Okay, she is not there now, a new head they have, but however that party, it had just 5% of the vote share, it increased to 25% in the recent election. Means what? There is a backlash against globalization in Western world. Why? Because there is job loss, lack of economic growth, lack of development, increasing inequality, and that is leading to what? Increased social movements. In America, there was this Occupy Wall Street movement protesting against growing inequality, and you can see financial crisis in the Western world, and this is giving room for whom? For the right wing groups. Like, what do you mean by right wing group? Now Trump, what did he promise when he won the election? He told, I am going to build wall according across Mexico, I will kick out the Mexicans, I will keep jobs for Americans. He brought a policy called as what? America First policy. First preference will be given to Americans, later to others. Then he accused India and China of doing trade war. You know, these countries are involved in trade war, and there is growing supremacy of the white American group, racist groups like this Ku Klux Klan. Ku Klux Klan is a group in America. They believe that America is only for the white, not for the blacks, not for the browns. All outsiders should be thrown out. So these kind of groups are becoming stronger. Why they are becoming stronger? Because they have an opportunity, because now people do not have jobs and people want somebody who will protect their jobs, and who can do it? These people can do it. Same thing now, if you look at, I don't know, Hitler also. Many see Hitler, Hitler was directly a dictator. No, Hitler came through democracy. He was made the chancellor of Germany. So if you interestingly see about this Hitler, when Hitler initially he was a German officer, intelligent officer. So they hired Hitler to keep a check on the Nazi group, the very group which he later went on to lead. Nazi group at that point of time, they were a very small group, means they didn't have so much support and all, less than 5% of Germans supported Nazi. So he was an informer, he has to inform the government about the activities of Nazi group. But when he started attending their meetings, he became so influenced by the Nazi group, and in one of the meetings he went and delivered. He was usually a shy guy, he never used to speak much, but that emotions came out and he spoke very well, and the Nazi group people were very impressed by Hitler's speech, and he started gaining traction within. And you can see at the same time what started happening in Germany. Germany started going through economic crisis, the Great Depression, which kept in across Europe. So what happens in Great Depression? That is what there is a documentary in Netflix, How to Become a Tyrant. If you have time, watch it. It's a very nice. They have discussed about Hitler, Mussolini, others. So they say usually normal times people will be normal. You cannot imagine people can they think like that. But when things goes wrong, like economic crisis, etc., there is a vacuum. Okay, like see, for example, let us think you are clearing prelims after prelims, you are clearing mains after mains. Then you will tell, why do I need Nikhil sir? Okay. Suppose you are failed prelims after prelims after prelim, nothing is working out. Then you want somebody to guide you. Same thing when economy is not doing well, when things are going worse, that is when leadership crisis will emerge, and that is when there is a theory which says that people will start thinking that we need a strong leader, strong leadership is required, and that leader was Hitler, because Hitler was very good with his respect to what oratory skills. He had exceptional oratory skills, and that is when he went on to become Nazi party started to gain traction, and he went on to become the chancellor of Germany. And once he became a chancellor, then he started to what you can say, bring his policies into picture, and when Germany went on to become a dictatorial state. And the thing what he used to control was ideology. It was there. If you don't agree with the ideology, force will be there. But his ideology was so powerful in that regard. He had a minister, okay, called as Goebbels. Okay, Goebbels was he was also attending this Nazi meets and all, and he was a deep fan of Hitler. He was impressed by Hitler's speech and all, and he was like Hitler's fan. So when Hitler, just give me a minute. When Hitler valued loyalty more than anything, because he wanted people who are very loyal to him. Hitler always kept a close people who are trustworthy, and Goebbels was one of the most loyal person. So he made him the propaganda minister in his cabinet. What do you mean by propaganda minister? You will promote propaganda through media, through print news, okay, like trying to build hero worship culture. That was the main job of Goebbels. But what happened towards the end, that Hitler made a mistake in that he attacked off Russia in that regard, and Russia knew that they just had to wait till the winters will arrive. Then they knew that Hitler will be trapped, and that is what exactly happened. The Russians formed an alliance with America at that point of time, and one attacked from the east, the other attacked from the west. Now Hitler was trapped. Hitler knew that is the dead end. So he called Goebbels, because Goebbels had a wife and 3 children or 6 children, I don't know. So he told them, you escape, I have booked all the arrangements, you go off, you escape off, because we are going to lose the war. So Goebbels will tell, okay, and he will go back. But that night he won't escape. He will poison all his 6 children, and he will also take poison. He will give poison to his wife, and he will write a letter saying that what, I don't want my children to grow up in a country which does not have Hitler. So that we say is the power of ideology. That is how. So that is what we call as soft power in that regard. So here we are going to also look into what is hard power, what is soft power in that regard. And globalization, today we have seen that how globalization is moving or leading towards the negative impact in developed world, where in developed world you have different political associations which are far right groups. They are rising in that regard. In developing countries you find both positive and negative of globalization. You can take what are the positives of globalization in developing world. Let us take India as an example. And if you take what are the positives you see of globalization in India? Correct, jobs have been created. Then ease of doing business, etc. We are trying to match the working standards in other countries. Then it has improved the standards of people, like we have halved the poverty, which was almost 48% to 21%. Then political, organized, you can say modern values have kept into society, women empowerment has happened. Okay, we have seen that the Western culture has brought certain changes, like you can see conservatism within Indian society to a certain extent has been reduced. You can go on. What are the negative impacts of globalization on India? You can say one, the foreign investments have destroyed the domestic industry, small scale sectors. Then that is what we say, Westoxification. What do you mean by Westoxification? Too much imposition of Western culture. Like today you can see people are more interested in Western culture. They are not interested in their own culture, which is there. So local cultures are dying in that regard. Then okay, you can say it is brought more corporate funding into Indian political parties. That can lead to more corporate control of Indian policy making. Then cannot say that anything else. Inequality has become more. No doubt GDP has grown, but inequality has also equally grown. Environmental destruction, okay, because they are more because we follow GDP, right? In GDP you are only valuing what, the value of the commodity, not the other thing. And you can also say, this is one aspect, but you can also say there is something called as globalization. Okay, there is a view which says that not that globalization has completely made Indian culture lost, globalization also helped Indian culture to develop. So for example, if you say genes has crept into the culture system, but you have a reverse export which is happening, jeans with kurta, that has become a new trend. Or you can say McDonald's, when they came to India, the first year they celebrated Deepavali, and during Deepavali time they did not serve non-veg for 1 month in that regard, when first McDonald's came to India. Now you have McTikki Aloo. It's a new flavor which McDonald's has introduced in India. Why? Because the Western culture and Indian culture, we say, a fusion in that regard. Or you take this Honey Singh in that regard. He uses pop music in Punjabi language. So there are 3 aspects to it. There is positive, there is negative, and there is something new which is happening called as globalization. So this we have to take as I took India as an example, that we have to look at developing societies as a whole, what has been the impact or the response of these countries to globalization. And you have 1 or 2 scholars here that you have to know that what they view about globalization. Understood? So this is the whole chapter on globalization, and the same chapter will also help you, what you can see in essay related questions or in your GS paper 1. Then you have theories in international politics. So here you have different theories such as idealism, realism, liberalism, Marxism, feminism, social constructive theory. So you can see this is again a repetition of what you read in part A, ideologies, but the only difference here is that we are going to look ideologies from an international politics perspective. Okay. So if you take idealism, and the name only it is there, very ideal. So they say that countries can work together, war is not required, peace can be achieved, etc. Realism is not like that. They say that all countries will go for its national interest. Their survival is first important. They don't care about human rights in other countries, and all countries will try to increase their what you can say advantages compared to others, and that is what they say. War is inevitable. War is bound to occur. Liberalism is an ideology in holistics. They say that though countries go to war, if you improve trade between countries, war will become less relevant. Countries can cooperate, international institutions can be created, we can manage international politics. Realism says that in international politics, it is like a jungle, law of the jungle. In jungle, whoever is powerful, they are the king. But liberalism says no, we can create institutions to convert this jungle into zoo. We can regulate the behavior. That is their theory. That is what theory means. What it is a hypothesis given by one person. It might be partially correct, there might be criticism against that, you have to look at. Marxism common everywhere. They say that capitalism or the business groups, they dominate international politics. Countries are controlled by big multinational companies in that regard, and they try to create problems for workers across the world. That is what Marxism believes in. Feminism, again same thing. When we discuss in part A, here they try to use gender lens and to see, okay, how many women presidents are there in the world. Okay, so how do women see security? Traditionally, when countries spoke about security, we mainly spoke about border security. Your border is safe, your military should be strong, you have to be able to protect yourself from another country, then you will be secure. Feminism, they don't only say that is very narrow way of seeing security. They say there is insecurity within the country. For example, rapes which happen within the country. So they say, who told security is only, it comes from Pakistan. Okay, and tomorrow tsunami happened. That is also security threat. So for what they argue is that more number of people die because of cyclones rather than more number of people dying because of war. So these are all what we call as non-traditional security threats. Corona, it created insecurity for every country. What do you say, the invisible enemy in that regard. So feminists say that why security is defined very narrowly, because throughout the history states are controlled by men, and men only think about war and only think about border security. They do not focus on security such as food, water, education. So that if more number of women become decision makers in global politics, then they say security will broaden, a new era of security will occur. Why they say women by nature are less aggressive, more cooperative, etc. This is one theory, but some would disagree with that. They say then why did Indira Gandhi go to war? Why did Margaret Thatcher had for him? And if you take Indira Gandhi and Mahatma Gandhi, who was more pro ahimsa? So they say that it is theoretically wrong to say that the nature of the state depends upon the gender who is ruling. Gender might be one factor, but state works on many other factors. Okay, that is one counter theory which is there. Social constructivism is nothing but ulidaro kandante, same to same, means how you see. So they say that realism told world is full of danger, you have to go for war to survive. They told why they gave such a theory, because the person who gave that theory, he assumed that humans by nature are selfish, egoistic, materialistic. Feminism say that if women become this thing, it will be more. Why? They say because they are seeing the world that way. So social construction means whatever reality we know, it is not the whole reality, it is actually a social construction, it is created by the society. So their ultimate purpose is absolute truth cannot be established. Truth is relative. It is might be your truth, half is my truth. There is no complete truth. Truth is always a perspective of one particular person. So these are the different ideologies we will be looking at, mainly from understanding international politics. You understand, in part A, it was mainly understanding ideology. Now applying the ideologies to understand how world works or how countries behave in that regard. Then we will go into core concepts in IR. What are the core concepts in IR? Power, balance of power, national interest, collective security, then you have nuclear proliferation. So these are certain concepts we will be going to trying to understand this concept in this regard. So see, like I will explain one example, not all, I will take one and explain. If you take power, how do you measure power in international politics? So if you say this country is powerful, on what basis you are telling they are powerful? Okay, you told it is based on strong. Now Japan, is it a powerful country in the world? Oh, he added one more thing, military. Okay, economy plus military. Is America the most powerful country in the world? Then why could they defeat Taliban? Right, if you are following current affairs, recently Americans came to an agreement with Taliban, they are evacuating Afghanistan. Going by your logic, you told they are military powerful. What is power? Power is your ability to change the behavior of another person, make that person listen to you. So why did the Americans were not able to change Taliban? They used now, they did war now for 16 years. They went. That's what they evacuated because they know that they are going to lose the war. Let it be any warfare. Why didn't the Americans, if they are so powerful? Let it be any issue. No, I am not speaking change in government. You can say America was not able to promote their interests there. So means they are not able to influence. Why? So this is a big problem. There is no one way to measure power. That is the normal understanding is that we can measure power. Measuring power itself is a challenge. So some say America is the most powerful country, but some say in what basis they are the most powerful when they cannot influence. They lost Vietnam War. A small guerrilla force. So that is what we say that power has different facets. We cannot holistically say. So you can divide into compartments: political power, economic power, social power, ideological power, technological power. Again point. So that is what we say. Now military power, it is very difficult to fight a guerrilla warfare. Even if it is the most powerful military in the world, they will struggle to fight guerrilla warfare. Success ratio is very less against guerrilla warfare. So that is the concept we need to look into. Can we measure power? Is there any scientific way that you can tell he is powerful? There are different theories which says that. Okay. So that is what we will be seeing, that what is power? What are the different types of power, and can we measure power? Okay, and some say that some say that there are different, like China is an economic power, yet they are to become a military power. They say America is a military power, but their economic power is declining in that regard. So they say holistically you cannot tell somebody is powerful or not. India, they say, we are not yet a military power, but we have a potential to be an economic power, but we are good in our ideological power, soft power. Yoga has been declared International Yoga Day. And even in Afghanistan, if you take the RAND Corporation is a think tank in America. They did a survey, means they asked Afghan people that whom they want to see, which country they want to see in association for development of Afghanistan. And 90% of the people gave the answer as India. It was not America, it was not Pakistan, it was not China. Why? Because it was India's soft power in that regard. India has built, dams. India has a good image in Afghanistan. So that is how we can say India is a ideological power. but we have to see and we have to study that, okay, which power, there is a word called as smart power. Yeah, you have heard hard power, soft power. Hard power is you use sanctions, you threaten somebody. Soft power I told na, like what India did, ideological hold or using religion, culture as a tool to connect. Smart power is a new term where you say that you have to mix both hard power and soft power to achieve your goals. China is an expert in smart power. So initially they give loans, attractive investment opportunities, but once you take a loan you are trapped, and then they will exercise hard power with taking over the projects, etc. So we will be studying power, balance of power. Balance of power is how do we balance power, like China is becoming more powerful than India, so how do we balance China. So we are forming a Quad which is there, we are also doing Malabar exercise, we are also modernizing our defense industry in that regard, that is what we can say. Collective security, so how holistically, how means countries together can come together and form a, like you can see UN peacekeeping forces is an example of collective security. So we will go into the idea that when did collective security emerge, what is collective security, does collective security really work or is it failed, that is the main aspect of these topics. Okay. For all these topics till now the source will be class notes, and there is a book, okay, but this book you do not need to read end to end. Selected chapters in this book, that is Andrew Haywood, Global Politics. Actually this is a very good book, but the problem is that it is a very fat book, and first you read class notes, NCERT class notes, and you can bank on NCERT also, that is Contemporary Global Politics. Only after you read class notes and NCERT, then final stage you refer what? This book as a reference material to get examples, etc. But it is an excellent book to understand global politics. Andrew Haywood, Heywood, Andrew Haywood, Global Politics. Then we will be going into the aspect of Cold War, non-aligned movement, disintegration of Soviet Union, then we will be going into the American hegemony, then we will be going into decline of American hegemony. So these are all connected chapters, and you can say this comes in which part of your syllabus, all these parts. If you take GS1, same chapters are there, same to same you have to read. Again here it is no different, you do not write answer differently in political science and IR. Maybe one or two quotes or one or two thinkers will be adding. So here we will be going into what caused Cold War, what was the consequence of Cold War and phases of Cold War, and then we will be going into non-aligned movement was born because of Cold War. When the world was divided into two camps, there were many countries who felt that there should be a third way. Same thing, we will be reading about what is NAM, when did NAM start, what are the objectives of NAM, what was the achievements of NAM, and the most favorite question which UPSC is repeatedly asked, do you think NAM is relevant in present day times? And then you have disintegration of Soviet Union. Why did USSR break away? What were the reasons to it? You have that NCERT book I told now, what is that? Contemporary Global Politics. This along with class notes would be more than enough to cover these parts, and these are all easy parts, okay. These are not difficult, even a plain reading of this it is much easier to understand, but you need to connect the dots that you know what happened. And once disintegration of Soviet Union happened, the America went on to become a superpower. So we will be studying same thing, I don't know, I just now explained in starting what are the, how did America promotes its power in the world. Then we will be looking into what is the challenges for the American hegemony. China is a bigger challenge to the American hegemony. America's economy has weakened in that regard. Okay, we will look into these areas. Then we will be going into the aspect of international institutions. Now this is where many students have concern, sir, there are more than 100 agencies, how to prepare all that? Refer first previous year questions, see that is there any agency they have asked. If you actually see, they only asked about United Nations, World Bank, IMF, WTO, International Court of Justice, International Criminal Court. They have not even asked about UNESCO, they have not even asked about UNICEF. UPSC won't, especially in political science, they won't go into these areas. They will mainly ask the major institutions which are mentioned. Sir, how to read these chapters? Who can know that what is happening in UN and all? That is the misconception. Nobody is going to ask you what decision, what resolution they passed in UN. That is first. That's why I told, go see the question. They are only going to ask you the overall analysis. Like what? If you take UN, I will tell you what themed questions will come. One, they will tell why UN was established in the first place, a brief history. Second one, what are the achievements of UN? Then, what are the criticism against UN? Then you have to know about what are the reforms we need to bring with respect to UN. The same chapter, if you take UN, there also you read about non-aligned movement. The same chapter is also there in part B. If you look into your part B of the syllabus, they give India and NAM and they give India and UN. These are not two different chapters. When we do, we study as a single chapter. It is nothing but a continuation. Now, what do you mean by India and UN? You have to see what is India's contribution to UN. And India is demanding permanent seat in Security Council, will we get or not? You have to tell why India is demanding, why India should get a permanent seat in Security Council or not. And check with the question papers what is there. You can see these are the areas just they have asked. Nobody is going to ask you to tell what is the recent resolution they passed on Russia, Ukraine. Not a good. Only if there is some kind of landmark resolution, that is changing the face of global politics, then it might come. Normal things they are not going to. Similarly, WTO. Last year, many students easily guessed the question on WTO because there was a agreement on fishery subsidies that came in paper. Easy, if you had prepared and gone, easily you would have written because everybody knew that is a very important development. Now, if you take UNFCCC, climate change, because climate change is one more chapter. Global climate negotiations, not climate change. Negotiations you will be reading. So, if you take last year Sharm el Sheikh summit has happened, in that they have signed an agreement on what? Loss and damage. You have to know this, 90% question will come on this, and they won't ask everything. They will ask what is the difference between global north? Global north we are referring to countries, developed countries, global south, developing and underdeveloped countries. So, both countries have lot of differences when it comes to climate change negotiations. Like what? Like countries like India says that there should be common but differentiated responsibilities. I think in prelims also when you read, you would have read about it. CBDR. What is CBDR? Full form I know, I only told common but differentiated but what it is? Why? Correct. Developed countries should take more responsibility than developing countries. Why?
Because they are the responsible.
So you can say, as he said, most of the developed countries first went to industrialization. Developing countries have not industrialized. Who released more carbon into the atmosphere? It is the developed countries, not developing countries. So basically they have to take more responsibility. Now coming and telling developing countries should also contribute. So India would argue, we might be the world's third largest emitter of carbon, but when you go by per capita, we are the one of the lowest for our population the amount of carbon we are releasing is very less. So India is saying that it is wrong to come and now and say that you should be also equally, that is why the term common but differentiated responsibilities. So when you read climate change negotiation, again here one problem, what like last year one student told, sir there are 27 COPs, how can I remember 27 COPs? Who told you to remember 27 COPs? UPSC is not so harsh, UPSC also understand that no human can remember all 27. They are going to ask you question on the last or the latest COP, they are going to ask you broad questions, what are the differences between global north and global south, okay. They might ask how Paris climate change agreement has changed the relations between global north and global south. These are the areas they can ask. So nobody is going to ask you what is there in COP3, COP4. Prelims they might match the following etc. Here though no. Broadly they want to ask you the analysis part of it, how you have understood, what is the view of the global south countries, especially in India. India is considered as the leader of the developing world. So these kind of questions will come. Similarly in IMF and World Bank, don't worry sir, should I know the reports and all, nobody is asking you any report, again an analysis. I don't know, conditional loans what we discussed is one of the criticism against IMF. So for this you can just directly bank on the class notes, it is completely filled, we can back our class notes to be the best. I won't tell in other areas, some areas we are the best, if you take in any Indian, look at the notes, our notes is better than anybody because we have updated the recent examples in that regard. And similarly International Court of Justice and International Criminal Court, don't worry about biting facts, headquarters of International Court of Justice, how many members are there, but if you want to know we will study that as part of general, 9 judges, 15 judges are there, there are tenure is 9 years in that regard, is all there, but here they are not going to ask that, they are going to ask okay, is International Court of Justice effective in resolving disputes between two countries, or what is their track record that we have, and what are the reforms that can be brought. So in every area there is a theme, what is the theme? Causes, effects, impact, solutions, areas of reform, way forward. If you prepare that part, the template is the same, so there is no specific thing you need to update. Then you have few chapters on one global issues, like what, same thing I don't know, democracy. So if you remember in the first class we discussed about democracy versus development, democracy is not suitable in third world countries etc. Then we will study about nuclear proliferation. There are two chapters, nuclear arms race and nuclear deterrence and nuclear proliferation, both are same, there is no different. Then we will be also reading about human rights. I don't know, in part A you would have read human rights, sorry paper 1, here also again we are reading human rights. Then I don't know, climate concerns, gender justice. So when you read feminism, you would already read gender justice. So these are all what repeated themes. That's what I told, syllabus looks very big, but if you actually break down the syllabus, there is a lot of repetitions within the syllabus. There is no need to write two things. If you read one, it will cover both. So this is largely your paper 2 part A. So any doubt in this part before we go to the last part? Any doubt which you have? Now if you go into paper 2 part B, this we say about, it is purely Indian foreign policy, and this is one of the most easiest part. If you ask me, now many people tell this is very difficult, no, this is actually the most easiest part if you know how to study, because there is nothing much to study here. If you know, if you are reading newspaper regularly, or if you are reading news, listening to news regularly, or you are following any current affairs material regularly, that is more than enough to write answers. So what is the questions here they will ask? They are going to ask, one, the features of Indian foreign policy, then evolution of Indian foreign policy, then continuity and changes in Indian foreign policy, then institutions which play a key role in making of Indian foreign policy. So, even if you have a lot of common sense in that regard, easily you can write answers in these areas. Let us take features of Indian foreign policy. Can you tell me in general, you know about we have a foreign policy, what are the general features? Non-alignment, then you know Vasudeva Kutumam, that the world is one big family. Just give me a minute. Yeah, now coming back to the features, non-aligned movement, then what else? We can say we do not, initially it was no nuclear weapons, later then we went on to become a nuclear weapon country, yeah, no first use policy. Apart from that, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. No, see, these are all policies. I am telling what are the features. Anti-colonialism, anti-racism. Okay, Article 51 in your DPSP says that India wants to respect international rules, regulation. India wants to respect international institutions in that regard. Okay, and India has what you can say soft corner towards developing societies, developing countries. We provide more aid to developing countries. So these are the major features. Okay, so we have to see how these features evolved or why these features came. So India was colonized for 200 years by Britain. That is why we follow anti-colonialism. India faced racism during the British. That is why we are anti-racist, anti-racism. So you can see India did not establish diplomatic relations with South Africa till 1992. Why? Because there was a white government in South Africa which was following racist policies, apartheid, what you can call. And then we also have to look at why did India, being an opposer of nuclear weapons, went on to herself acquire a nuclear weapon. We have to look into the reasons for China getting nuclear weapon and the threat which India faced in that regard. Then we will be also going into continuity and changes in the Indian foreign policy. So from Nehru to Modi, if you see, what is the shift in foreign policy you can see. See, this you do not read reading also. Reading in the sense if you have basic idea what was the foreign policy then. So what is the shift you will see? What has changed? BJP is quite right, Congress is quite left.
BJP is supporting the Israel union.
Okay.
But Congress always backed the
Palestine.
Palestine.
So one you can say that there was a shift from idealism towards realism. Okay. Second one, India was following more of purely defensive policy. But now you see there is a slight shift where we are following defensive offense. Okay, that is surgical strike against Pakistan. Before we are following non-alignment, but now we are following a strategy called as multi-alignment. For example, you can use certain quotes in your answer, like you have S. Jaishankar, the current external affairs minister. He has written a book called as India Way. Okay. In this book, what he says that in the current emerging global dynamics, India must engage America, manage China, reassure Russia, cultivate Europe, and bring Japan into play. So in notes we will give certain quotes which you have to use it in your answers. Sir, how can I write this quote, sir? You have to do multiple readings in that regard, or at least if you are not able to reproduce the exact thing, try to at least provide the gist of it, what it says. So this we can see that the current external affairs minister or current scholars such as C. Rajamohan, they are saying NAM is dead, NAM is in coma. Why should India follow with a Cold War legacy? So today we have to engage with different powers in the world. So you can see India is part of Quad, India is also part of SCO, India is also part of BRICS Bank. So that is one more shift what we can say. The fourth shift we can say that many times foreign policy also changes with regards to changing the political party, like what he said. So you can see if you take India's policy towards Israel, we have seen a drastic shift, especially with the Modi government. So during Nehru's time in that regard, or till 1992, India's relations with Israel was not so good. In the sense, India did not have any kind of diplomatic relations with Israel. The reason is that India supported Palestinian cause, and there are 2-3 reasons that why we supported the Palestinian cause. One was India felt morally what Palestine was demanding was correct, that it was an Arab land which the Israelis had taken over. Second, that time Congress was ruling India, and India is one of the, I think, third or the fourth largest Muslim population. So that domestically the Muslim population will feel that, you know, India has not stood with an Islamic country. Third, Gulf countries which were there, they were all hardcore supporters of Palestine. They had close relations with, means they supported the Palestinian cause. So India felt that if we had open relations with Israel, this might affect India's relations with Saudi, Iran, Iraq. And if you look into Saudi, Iran, Iraq, these are all major suppliers of oil to India. So India felt that it is going to hurt India's energy security. Okay, so this was the thinking back then, that why. In fact, you had Albert Einstein, he was a Jew. He had written a letter to Nehru saying that, you know, asking the Indian government to open up relations with Israel, but India was reluctant. But it was Rajiv Gandhi in 1980s who started to change the policy. So he said that, because see what happened by 1970s and 1980s, many of the Gulf countries themselves, they improved relations with Israel, Egypt, Jordan, and India felt betrayed. The reason was that India was consistently supporting Palestine in UN every time we voted against Israel. But when it came to Kashmir issue, many of the Arab countries, the Muslim countries, they sided with Pakistan. Example, Egypt, in spite being a NAM member, they had more tilt towards Pakistan. So this made India to be more realistic, not idealistic in that regard. But even if you see who is that, Rajiv Gandhi, he just opened an unofficial office in that regard, not an official diplomatic relations. Then it was during P.V. Narasimha Rao's time in 1992 when India officially opened diplomatic relations with Israel. Then you can see the relationship continued, I.K. Gujral, H.D. Gowda, Atal Bihari Vajpayee. But during 1999, the relationship became further close. The reason was that the Kargil conflict, you know, Pakistan had upper hand in the sense that they had occupied the Kargil hills. India is fighting from a lower elevation. So India needed the aerial pics of the Pakistani positions. Americans declined to give because they told we are going to maintain neutrality. And it was Israelis who helped India to provide the aerial things, and this boosted further India-Israel relations. You know, defense relationships started to grow. But in spite that, till Narendra Modi, no Indian Prime Minister had ever visited Israel. They had not, you know, set foot on Israel. That was symbolic because India didn't want, India was maintaining policy of hyphenation. You know, that they were very sensitive about what is going to happen with Palestine if we develop closer relations with Israel. Means equating Israel and Palestine as one. But when Modi became the PM, things saw a drastic turn. For the first time, you know, in 2014 and 15, when in United Nations, India didn't vote against Israel. There was resolution on Israel. India abstained. Means what is absent? They didn't go to vote only. So this they told, no, the Modi government has dehyphenated India's policies with Israel. Then in 2016, it was more apparent when Prime Minister visited Israel. He became the first Indian Prime Minister to ever visit Israel. So many times why we say in foreign policy when you read, many people will only read books. Okay, books actually for this is not required. That is one. See what happens in our South India, right? We are more book oriented. You know, just read a book, go vomit the same thing in exam. End of the day, you are not going to pass. Not going to pass in the sense UPSC won't give value for writing the same thing. You have to bring something unique. And why I told IR is easy to read in the sense, many videos what we watch, that itself enough to write an answer to understand, because IR you can understand easily through videos. So let us think the Modi's first visit to Israel. Now what we can derive from this video in that regard. 1 minute. What's up, video?
My friend Prime Minister Narendra Modi, welcome to Israel. Aapka suhagat hai, mere dost.
What a great order.
Great day, historic day. Welcome, my friend. Wonderful. It's the first time an Indian Prime Minister is visiting Israel. We receive you with open arms. We love India. We admire your culture. We admire your history, your democracy, your commitment to progress.
It is my singular honor to be the first ever Prime Minister of India to undertake this groundbreaking visit to Israel.
On this visit, your Make in India initiative meets my Make with India policy. We're setting up a $40 million innovation fund as the seed for even greater cooperation on technology between us. I believe the formula for success is simple. It's I squared, T squared. That equals Indian talent times Israeli technology. It equals Israel, India's ties for tomorrow. I squared, T squared.
800 million people in India are below 35 years of age group. The talented and skilled youth of India are also its driving force. They propel my vision to transform India, its industry, its economy, its way of doing business, and its interface with the world. Alongside building a partnership for shared economic prosperity, we are also cooperating to secure our societies against common threats such as terrorism.
But I remember, my friend, what you said in that first meeting. You said that when it comes to India-Israel relations, the sky is the limit. But actually, my friend, the sky isn't the limit, because today, even our space programs are working together to achieve even greater heights.
So if you looked into the video, now they are not going to ask you question that what has happened in the past. The question will mainly come as what has happened in last 1 year or last 2 years, or what is the significant shift in the policy. Now within that video you saw many points where the relationship is growing. Second thing is that why the relationship is going, there only they are told terrorism, dry land water technology. So this does not require any special preparation. Again a point, that's why I told IR is one subject. You might feel in the initial beginning that how to tackle IR because it's very dynamic in that regard. But the point is that it is not dynamic in the sense that every day some new agreements which are signed, that is all not important. Largely the analysis, how the relationship is changing, what are the factors which are bringing the two countries close. And if you see in the video also, the Israeli Prime Minister had gone to receive the Indian Prime Minister. Now even in foreign policy, symbolism also matters a lot. That's an indication that how two countries are becoming close. So the convention is that usually a Israeli Prime Minister won't go to receive an incoming Prime Minister. That is only done in cases where they give special status to that country. So in case of Israel, the Israeli PM has done that in the past only to the US President and to the Pope. So today they are doing it to the Indian Prime Minister. It means Israel gives importance to India because of there is a lot of shared goals in that regard. For example, Israel is a defense exporter, India is a defense importer. India has also signed many agreements with Israel with respect to dry land agricultural technologies. And this is not Narendra Modi's first visit to Israel, it is the first visit as a PM. Modi had already developed close relations with Israel when he was the CM of Gujarat. Okay, Gujarat had signed many agreements with Israel. So naturally when he became the PM, it was expected that the relationship will improve. And that is why when Modi's visit happened, the Israeli diplomats, they jokingly told, all these years India was treating Israel as a mistress, but now it has acknowledged her as the wife. ಇಷ್ಟು ದಿನ ಕದ್ದು ಮುಚ್ಚಿ ಸಂಬಂಧ ನಡೀತಾ ಇತ್ತು, ಬಟ್ ಇವಾಗ ಓಪನ್ ಆಗಿ ಹೇಳಿದ್ದಾರೆ we have relation. So these are certain quotes which are there. So here if you look into the question paper also, maximum question they have asked here is that, okay, give reasons that why two countries are becoming close in last 10 years, or what are the challenges further which is there in India-Israel relationship, or how India is trying to balance Israel and Palestine under the new government in the country. Nobody is going to ask you write about the Gulf War or what happened in 1900. That is the student's perception, that what I have to know everything. No. Similarly, if you take India and China, nobody is going to ask you what happened during Nehru's time and write about. No, you have to know that to just a background. But what is going to come in the exam is mainly the Belt Road Initiative, or China's aggression in South China Sea, what they claim as 9-9, or the recent border issues with India. Okay, why China is becoming aggressive along the border, what India can do to face China along the border. The mistake what happens here is some people will try to do PhD. Now see what will happen, I think in GSIR classes also they will ask, sir, which book to read. Me or Shashank sir would have handled. There is no book for IR. No, which book do I read? No, don't need to read any book. Just read newspaper regularly, or we release this magazine called as what? News to Notes. Or in our Telegram channel, we will regularly post articles. Just read those articles, follow what is there in the class, more than enough. Okay. But where you need to be good is that you have to analyze why is this happening with that. That will give you more clarity. One or two quotes you have to take. Like there is a quote saying that Shashi Tharoor, he calls in his book Pax Indica, he says that India and Pakistan are brother enemies. Okay. Or there is a quote which says that rise of China, because China is one topic now, because China today has risen. So Napoleon said back in 14th century, once China is a sleeping giant, once she wakes up, she will shake the world, and China is doing it currently. So these kind of interesting, but why we suggest every day read newspaper, why read editorial pages, because editorials carry certain important stuff like this. Now what many students will do is that, I am telling you, even for GS, many students will do, or there is a popular perception, there is no need to read editorial, there is no need to read newspaper, directly I can bank on Vision, Shunya, or Insights Current Affairs Material. You can, but you have to have the context. Okay, if you have not touched, like what will happen, some toppers would have told, no, I didn't read newspaper only. We have to also see that maybe the topper has cracked the exam in his third attempt. He would have read newspaper in his first attempt. Maybe after that he stopped reading newspaper because he got the context, he understand easily. Now you directly open Vision material and read, you won't understand what is the background to it, what is happening, etc. It is just dumping a lot of information in one place. So when you read newspaper, you develop the acumen, you will develop the understanding, you will develop the analysis. And that's what I told, what will happen in market is that, see, philosophy of life is simple. Whatever is tasty to eat is not good for health. Whatever is not tasty to eat is good for health. Similar here, whatever is hard work to do will fetch you marks. Whatever eases your hard work won't fetch marks. But students want what they want, fast food culture. Today we joined, tomorrow we are IAS. It won't happen like that. There is an American proverb. Everybody wants to go to heaven, but nobody is ready to die. Everybody want to become IAS, but nobody ready is to study like an IAS. They will mainly, especially in our state, in Karnataka, main problem is that 80% of them they will study like clerk exam, but they want to become IAS. Means their effort is only to FDA, SDA or PSI. I am telling that is how they work, that is how they study. But their goal is to what? Their goal is to crack UPSC. It won't happen. If you study like a PSI exam and if you tell I am going to crack UPSC, won't happen. PSI is easy in the sense that you have to prepare separately, but easy what? Facts, more of facts. What is there? Which article is there in DPSP? 36 to 51. Which parts are part 4A? 100% in UPSC they are not going to ask. There will be simple questions in prelims, but in mains though they are not going to ask that. They are going to ask you the analysis of it. So that is what I told. That is what is, if you make your preparations easy, you will face difficulty in exam. But if you make your preparations, you take that effort and put in those effort, you will find results in exam. That is the mismatch which will happen. 90% of them what? They want easy things. They want quick pill. Like like last year there was one student. So she told, sir, tell me in political science only 2 books I have to read and I have to score 300. I told her, okay, you can read 2 books. She told what? Quit UPSC. No, that is, there is no 2 books, 3 books and all. See, for marketing purpose, no, somebody might tell this is only book, if you read this only book, you will get off 300. We guarantee you 300. First of all, we have to see whether that fellow scored 300 or not, for him to guarantee you 300. See, now if I will tell, I will make you score 300, no, I will never tell that. You can score 300 on your own effort, because when I have written the exam, maximum I have scored in PSIR is 290. When my score is only 290, how can I tell another person 100% will make you score 300? No, you can score, we can guide you. But it is you who are going to score 300, it is not the optional which is going to score 300 for you. Some people tell me an optional which is scoring 300. There are toppers in every optional who have scored 300. Get my point? So you don't score 300 just by joining the herd. Automatically I take this subject, my score is going to be 300. These are all the myths which are there. Some people like, after joining service I want to become foreign service, so I will tell. Don't take PSIR because you want to become a foreign diplomat. The first criteria to take a subject is that you should like it. Second criteria, are you comfortable in it? Third criteria is that how the subject is performing in last 3 to 4 years. Okay, fine. Then go for it. So that's what I told here also for IR. That is a myth which is there that you have to read a lot. It overnight it will change. Nothing is going to change overnight. You get a point? So if you take India and Israel question, nothing as much as changed. The major change which has happened is the Modi's visit to Israel. That's it. After that, sir, they have signed water sharing agreement. Why you will bother with it? Minor agreements are not all. Generally you can write 3-4 points. You have to divide politically what is the relation, defense what is the relation, economic what is the relation, culturally what is the relation. And many times just reading or listening will help you. Like if you become an IPS officer, today India and Israel have signed an MOU where they will train the IPS officers for 3 months in Israel, because Mossad, the Israeli intelligence agency, is has a lot of expertise in anti-terrorism and these things. Got the point? So this again not for all countries, they are mentioned in the syllabus. India neighbors, that is South Asia. Okay, again in South Asia, sir, should I read everything out Nepal? No. If there is any issue on Nepal, only then we will read. Okay, so usually they will ask questions on SAARC. Then you have other organizations, BIMSTEC. Then China, US, Russia, Japan, Israel, Afghanistan, Pakistan. These are the countries which popularly questions will come on, which they have also mentioned in the syllabus. Then you will be reading policies. India's neighborhood first policy, India's look east act east policy, okay, and Gujarat doctrine in that regard, which was there, IK Gujarat when he was prime minister. These are the important, and there is one connect Central Asia policy with Central Asia. Sir, should I read India, Kazakhstan, India, Kyrgyzstan, India? No. We will study India, Central Asia. Okay, UPSC is not harsh enough to go and tell right about India and Tajikistan. No. India, Central Asia, India, Africa, India, European Union, India, Latin America. So there India, Brazil, no. Second point. So largely the question will be region based. For only the important countries like China, Pakistan, US, question will come individual. So this whole is your political science syllabus which is there broadly for the exam. Okay. So for this part, as I told, there is no need of any textbook in that regard. you can purely blank on class notes, but you can refer certain websites which are there which carries good articles. One is Diplomat, the other is ORF and the Ministry of External Affairs website. Again, how to read articles, not every article is important, we will only tell you in the class which article one has to refer, or you follow the Telegram channel regularly, we will give you a compilation of the articles which are important country wise which is there. So this is, and you can follow the news to notes. So any doubt with respect to the syllabus part? Okay, Aman Kumar has asked, does NATO come under collective security? See, NATO comes under both. It is seen as collective defense. It is also seen as collective security. So what is the difference between collective security and collective defense? In collective security, the enemy is unknown. Okay, like let us think you are living in a gated community. What is gated community? Houses all located in one compound. So together you will have a common security. From whom you don't know. The thief can come from outside. Collective defense, you know who is the enemy. Okay. Now they say NATO initially was created to target USSR. But after USSR disintegrated, NATO became more of a collective security. Means there was no known enemy. Collectively they wanted to secure Europe in that regard. But today NATO is again coming back as a collective defense because Russia and China have come back to power. So there is no proper categorization whether NATO comes under the idea of collective security or it comes under balance of power or the concept of collective defense. So that you will understand once we do the concepts, what is collective security, what is collective defense and what is balance of power. Apart from that, any other doubt? Any other thing which sources, etc. Okay, if you have no other doubt, we will start with the first chapter in that regard. So here today we will be understanding about what is a political thought, and then we will be understanding what is political philosophy and what is the relation between the two. To start with, okay, what do you understand by thought? What do you mean by thought? Whose idea? Correct, it's an idea. Idea about what? Idea about politics. What is politics? Politics mainly revolves around power, and mainly we associate state and its institutions with power. Not only that, power also operates in society, but we are mainly focusing on about the state. So when we say political thought, these are ideas of a particular philosopher belonging to a particular age at a particular time. So that we refer to as what? Political thought. What are these? These are ideas presented by a political thinker at a particular time. So then what is political philosophy? What do you mean by philosophy? Philosophy is basically a Greek word. Philosophy. What is the meaning of that? What is philo? What is sophy? So philo means love towards wisdom or knowledge. So philosophy basically means you want to acquire knowledge. What is the meaning of political philosophy? You want to acquire knowledge about politics. So then now if we mix both, what is the relation between the two? You can say political thought is part of political philosophy, but political philosophy is much bigger. In the sense, you can say like this: every philosophy might be a political thought, but every thought is not philosophy. In the sense, everybody thinks, but does not mean every thinking will become a philosophy. For a thought to become a philosophy, it should be based on a large scale impact on the society in that regard. For example, Buddhism is a philosophy. Buddha presented an idea. He presented a thought, right? Buddha told what? Buddha told the world is full of sorrows. The root cause of sorrow is desire. Unless you eliminate the desire, you cannot attain moksha. So that's an idea presented by whom? Buddha. But that went on to become what? Philosophy. So similarly, when you say political thought or political philosophy, a political thinker has presented an idea, that idea over a period of time, it has become a large scale idea accepted by different groups, that becomes a philosophy. But every thinking that has become a philosophy, like you have Thomas Hobbes as a political thinker. Thomas Hobbes told the state was created by men. That's an idea, that's not a philosophy in that regard. It's just an idea which is presented. So we cannot say every thought becomes a philosophy, but we can say thought is part of philosophy. Philosophy is much broader in that regard. And when we think about how do these thoughts come, why do these ideas come? Okay, why do the people present the ideas? We need to understand ideas do not come in vacuum. Okay, so we can say there is a person called as Lusky. He says that every political thinker is a child of his times. What do we mean by that? You know, right, what is a political thinker? One who presents political ideas. So he is telling he is a child of his times. Means as you grow up as a child, your behavior, your thinking is shaped by your surrounding. So similarly, every political thinker's ideas is shaped by his surrounding. So whenever a political thinker presents his idea, we cannot just plainly read the idea, you need to read the idea with a certain context. You know point, he presented that idea at a particular time period and you need to understand that idea in a certain context. Only then you will be able to purely understand that idea. That is what we call as contextual approach. So there is something also called as approaches. What is an approach? How do you study that subject or how do you study that idea? What do you mean by contextual approach? You will try to study that idea, by studying in what context that idea emerged. If you don't understand the concept, you won't understand the idea. So for example, let us take Plato. Plato told democracy is the worst form of government. So democracy is bad. But if you see Plato today and you tell, you laugh at Plato. No, you will tell no, democracy is the best form of government. But if you want to understand Plato, why did he tell like that? You need to understand what was the situation in Athens. Otherwise you won't be able to understand that why this fellow told democracy is not correct. So political thought refers to certain ideas presented by thinkers at a particular time. And we need to understand the ideas going into those times, that what are the conditions that shape these ideas. Understand? And what is political philosophy? These ideas over a long term, they develop into philosophy. So what we can say, relation between political philosophy and thought? political thought is part of philosophy, but we cannot tell every political thought becomes a philosophy, not necessary. Got the point? Any doubt here in this part? Now coming to politics in that regard, the word political which is there. Politics or political, we have a broad meaning to it. So there is one person called as Laswell. Okay. Now what does Laswell? He says, according to him, politics is always associated with activity. Okay. He says that what? Politics is always associated with activity. What kind of activities? He says political activity. What kind of activities you do in politics? See, don't go by always textbook thinking, use common sense. Politics is there in India. What kind of activities involved, or who are the stakeholders? Very good. One stakeholder is people. What is the activity of the people? Let us say in India, you vote, you want to be part of the government formation, etc. So people play the activity of what? Selecting the rulers, policy making. Okay. Next, who can be a stakeholder? You have political parties. What is the activities that political parties will perform? They will try to gain votes. By gaining votes, they will try to gain power. The other activity in politics is that, be it political parties, be it individuals, they try to manipulate, okay, persuade, to change people's behavior. Why? They want votes, they want to capture power. Then what is the other activity in politics? What else is the activity? Just forming the government and running the government. So you look at all, there is one common thing. All is happening due to surrounding something called as power. That is why we say politics and power are inseparable. You cannot separate. You cannot say politics. When you say politics, it is necessarily associated with the concept of power. So when you say political thought, these are ideas concerning these. So when Plato presented his political thought, he made a study, or he gave an idea that why in Athens the rulers were corrupt, how power operated in Athens, how did they capture power, how did they manipulate people. And political thought might not be always saying that it is only presenting an idea. In political thought, you are also saying what is the problems in this society, and you are also trying to give a solution. It is also solution oriented, means you try to give a better alternative to it. And that is why there is one person who says that if you take the Western political thought, he says that to understand Western political thought, one needs to know history, and Western political thought is like a history which has no ending chapter. Means what? It is continuously evolving. So you have to know history to understand the Western political thought. But that history has not come to an end. Why it has not come to an end? It is a continuous process. What is the process? One political thinker presented his idea, the other political thinker criticized this idea, he gave his own idea, this idea again was criticized by somebody else and he presented his own idea. So this is a continuous evolving process. So that is when we want to understand Western political thought, you have to now connect the dots. Western political thought means the political ideas presented by political thinkers in the Western or European countries. That is what we call as Western political thought. Now to understand the Western political thought, we also have to understand the context. So if you want to understand Plato, you need to understand under what context Plato presented this idea. If you want to Aristotle, you need to understand under what context Aristotle presented this idea. You want to understand Machiavelli, you need to understand what was the conditions in Italy. There was no Italy at that point of time, he was from a particular state in Italy. What was the conditions back then? What's the point? And Western political thought means what? The European political thought. Now there is a popular saying that the whole Western political thought is nothing but footnotes of Plato and Aristotle. What is the meaning of footnote? What is the meaning of footnotes? Just the word footnotes. In a book, if you see in the bottom, there will be a summary, or there will be a kind of suggestions in that regard. The bottom of the page, that we call as footnotes. Now you read the context. The Western political thought is nothing but footnotes of Plato and Aristotle. What do you mean by that? So the whole Western political thought, it is based on the foundation of ideas of Plato and Aristotle. What others have contributed is nothing but they have built on this basis. They have just added small value addition to it. But the originality of the thought always remains Plato and Aristotle. So Plato and Aristotle are considered as the two pillars of the Western political thought. So we say without understanding the Greek political thought, you cannot understand the European political, because European political thought is deeply influenced by Greece. Okay, so that is why we say that is a contribution of Greece, because Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, they all came from Greece. And we consider Plato as the father of political philosophy. We consider Aristotle as the father of political science. That leads us to the next question. What is political philosophy? You have already read an idea presented by scholar, and you already know that every thought is not a philosophy, but yeah, thought can be part of philosophy. Every thought, every idea does not going to become a philosophy. But how it is different from political science? So in both one thing is common, the word political. One is philosophy, the other is science. What is the difference between philosophy and science? If you understand the difference between philosophy and science, you will be able to understand the difference between political philosophy and political science. So a philosophy does not have rational thinking. One, you can say philosophy is more based on values, science is more based on facts. What is the difference between values and fact? Now we will say on today is 4th of April, on 4th of April at 2:45 there was PSIR class in Insights IAS. True or false? True. Now we will say the political science class in Insights is the best in India. This does not come into the question of true or false. No, it does not come into the question of true or false. Oh, no, he is telling false. So you consider Shumaranjan is the best. So it does not come into the area of true or false. It comes into the area of good or bad. Till see, when it's a fact, you can verify. How you can verify? You will go check the video. Is it there or not at 2:30? Now values is that no, he told no, it's not. Now one more person tell no, it is good. One more person may tell it is okay. So values cannot be verified. Values, means their there exists dichotomy, no sorry what is that, there exists continuity, means it is a grey area, it is not black and white. Grey area means what? You cannot verify it. If somebody tells good, how do you verify it is good? What is the standard for good? If somebody tells is bad, how do you tell it is bad? Like now you tell that recently released movie, what is that, Kabja, now you tell, oh it is super movie. One fellow told I won't even give 0.5 star to the movie. There is no way you can tell whether it is true or false, because it is an opinion, it is a value, value means what you value in that regard. So political science is mainly based on facts, political philosophy is mainly based on values. When it comes to values, you cannot base it on facts, you cannot, there is no evidence for it. Here you can provide evidence. For example, now you can tell in the upcoming elections which party is going to, you can predict which party is going to win elections. For that you might do a scientific research. How? You will do exit poll, you use mathematical formula, you will produce your evidence saying that on this basis I am telling this will be the vote share. Now if you go into the value based thing, now you tell I want this party to come to power because this party is good, that is your perspective, you cannot determine whether the party is good or bad, it varies from person to person. So when you say philosophy, philosophy are based on values, philosophy it cannot be justified, there is no scientific evidence for it. For political science you can bring scientific evidence to it. So that is why we say political philosophy is normative, where political science we say it as it is empirical. Empirical means scientific, something which can be verified, which can be proven, understood. Philosophy cannot be proven. Now you can take Plato, if you take Plato, when we read Plato, we will be reading about this. Plato told every individual, every human body has a soul. Every soul, he told, will have 3 parts, 3 components, every soul, every human soul. That is courage, reason, appetite. Every body, human body has a soul, every soul has 3 elements. What is that? Reason, courage and appetite. But he says that this is not equally distributed. In some souls, reason is more. In some souls, courage is more. In some souls, appetite is more. Now he will tell, we need to identify that. We have to identify in which soul what is there. So for him, those souls which have reason, only they should become rulers. Those souls which have courage, they should become guardian class. And those souls which have appetite, they become the producing class. Now scientifically if you can see, okay, where is this soul, show me. You can't verify, there is no, this is all otherworldly things what he is speaking about. Okay, that is why I told it is normative, it is based on values in that regard, there is no scientific value. But if you go on to tell, I don't know, now if you do a scientific study and say, no, this party is going to this much percent, no, you can prove it empirically, you can tell I did a sample study, based on the sample study I used this formula, based on this formula I am making a prediction. The other thing with philosophy is that philosophy mainly deals with the question of good or bad. Like Plato told democracy is not good, and since he told it is not good, he also tried to give an alternative. What was that? Philosopher king, he told how to choose the ruler. But when it comes to political science, it deals with the question of what? True or false. Now you can take the Hindu philosophy, we say. Let us take Ramayana as an example. Now if you ask a question, is Ramayana true or false? It cannot be evaluated. Some will say no, it is true. How? They will tell no, you have places which are mentioned. Some will say no, it is false, it is just a story which has been made up. But when you take Ramayana in terms of values, what it will promote. So there was this girl who in Andhra Pradesh, and Sadhguru had gone to Andhra Pradesh in one of the speeches. She stood up and asked Jaggi Vasudev, that is Sadhguru, I don't think so Ramayana is true, it's a mythology. Sadhguru told maybe it is a mythology. Because there are both like Ram Setu, there again it comes into what, whether it is scientifically built or not. So what Sadhguru's opinion here is that you don't look at Ramayana in terms of whether it is true or false. The message of Ramayana is that what are the values one should inculcate. So for example, he asked her, why you are getting this doubt? So she told, Rama, Sita was kidnapped by Ravan. He was taken thousands of kilometers. Where is from Ayodhya? She was taken to Lanka. That too in when we are speaking about age when there was no vehicles, etc. Is it really that Rama went all the way down, in jungle, so much years of journey, and brought her back? So he told her, tomorrow when you get married, do you want a husband? If tomorrow you get kidnapped, you want your husband to come in search of you, or he'll tell, hey, this is very impractical, I'll find solution next door. So he told it is more about values. What is the value in that regard? What is the value that character promotes? So when we say philosophy, it cannot be scientifically proved. Philosophy is more value based study, that what kind of value. But that value might not be accepted by all. You are getting the point. Now you take Ramayana, there are different perspectives of Ramayana. Some can see Ramayana through a perspective of caste and say that Ramayana can be also told that it is trying to uphold the domination of Brahmins and Kshatriyas through the story. There are different ways. Feminists can look at Ramayana and tell, okay, there is no women empowerment. Rama doubted Sita. That's one more perspective. So here it cannot be come into the aspect of true or false. You cannot read into true or false. It mainly comes into good or bad. What values? What is the value which you prefer? Understood? Science is not like that. Science in come to the aspect of which can be evaluated, which can be see this is true, this is false. So this is a major difference between political philosophy and political science. So for a large part, politics was dominated by political philosophy, but then you can see it started to change. The subject started to become scientific. One of the reason is that other subjects became scientific, like sociology, psychology. They brought lot of empirical methods to study the subject, and political science was left behind. And that is when later you will read there was a behavioral school of thought. Behavioralism started, means they started bringing many methods from other subject to make this subject become what? Scientific in nature. Means facts are important, we need to collect the facts to present our theories. We cannot present our theories just based on otherworldly things. Okay. When we say political theory, when you say political theory, it is a combination of both political philosophy plus political science. You can present both. So what happened is that some told only values are important, some told only facts are important, but later within political science fraternity they understood both facts and values are important. If you only reduce the subject to collecting facts, the subject will lose relevance. The idea of a political thinker is not just to present facts. You also using that facts, you have to tell what is good, what is bad, how to build a better society. Similarly, a political philosopher, he cannot just tell otherworldly things, he also have to back his theory by certain facts. That is what we say. There was a school called as post-behavioralism. This is all later you will read, just I am telling an intro. That is when they understood both facts and values are important. You cannot separate the two. So that is the today's status, what we say political theory. It comprises of both political philosophy and political science. Facts and values both are important to understand. And we call Plato as the father of political philosophy, because if you see his ideas the presented mainly dealt with philosophical things. And we call Aristotle as the father of political science, because he was the first person who tried to introduce certain scientific method of study. See, what is philosophy? Philosophy is something which you cannot verify. What is science is something which can be verified, what you observe, what you see and what you present. Soul you cannot never see, na? Where you have you seen a soul? No. So Aristotle was the first person who tried to bring more practicality into the subject, but the end goal was same. Both were trying to find what is the best state. Plato went on to find what is an ideal state. Aristotle went on to find what is a practical state. So this you will understand tomorrow when we start with Socrates, Plato and Aristotle, that why did this Plato wanted to bring an ideal state, and we told now what is Western political thought. Every thinker's idea has been criticized by one more thinker. When Plato presented the idea, Aristotle criticized him. So he told, what you are telling is all, to hear it is good, but is it practical what you are saying? Because when you read Plato, you will understand, he will tell, we have to classify this society into three classes: ruling class, guardian class, producing class. On what basis? I told, this soul. In this soul, so Aristotle told, be practical, how you can do it. This one I will tell, we can do, we have an education system, I will do an education system, that education system runs for 50 years. So Aristotle told, who will study for 50 years? And this fellow told, that ruler who is selected, guardian class and ruling class, they should not marry, they should not have family. The children when they are born, he says that there should be something like state nursery. The state will take away all, because we are speaking about small city states, that's all context. Don't think now India, sir, how in India we can know. Go back to Athens. At that point of time, the population was very small. That we are speaking just about one city. Small cities, he will tell, the city will have only 10,000, 15,000 people. So whichever children are born, they will be taken away by the state. The state will nurse them, not their mothers. Why he will tell is that, but once you bring up a child, you will develop love towards your child. You will be very particular, you are not bothered about other children. That is why inequality will come. He will tell there should be no private schools, only government will run the school, the state will run the school, everybody will receive the same education. Based on that education, I told you they will conduct exam. On that exam, if you clear the next stage, then you can become a ruler. So if you are eligible to become a ruler, you cannot marry, you cannot have a family of your own. Why? Because he believes nepotism is one of the main reasons for corruption. So he will tell no marry. So this fellow tell, who can do such radical ideas? It's, to hear it is very nice, but to implement, is it possible? So this Aristotle tell, this fellow is too idealistic, he is too radical, and that is why Aristotle's main contribution was what? How to bring a practical state. So that is why we call him as the father of political science. Plato is father of political philosophy. So when tomorrow you read Plato and Aristotle, you will understand this thing, that why this fellow is called as the father of political philosophy and why this fellow is called of father. But both had similar goals. Both wanted to create an state. He wanted to create an ideal state, this fellow wanted to create a practical state. Got the point? So understood what is a thought, what is philosophy, what is political science. Okay, and why to understand an idea, we have to go to that context, because when ideas are presented, nobody gives ideas in vacuum. We cannot tell all ideas are presented, because most of the ideas are shaped by their conditions. Without understanding those conditions, your understanding of that idea won't be complete. That is why we say political thought is a contextual approach. We need to understand the idea presented by you. Sir, then I have every day one idea. Am I a political thinker? No. That is what I told you. Every idea does not become a political thought. These ideas should be accepted by large section of the society, and they have to deal with the state. Political means something which revolves around the state, functions of the state, creation of the state, power associated with the state, procedure associated with the state. That we call it as what? Political. And political is always what we say, public, common to all, not private. That is a Union Public Service Commission, public. State is related to public. Got the point? Any doubts here? What is a thought? What is philosophy? So understand, thought is part of philosophy, but every thought does not lead to philosophy. Okay. And difference between political philosophy and science: philosophy is based on values, science is based on facts. And what is a political theory is a systematic study of both facts and values can be called as political theory. So, if you summarize, political theory is study of certain ideas which might be philosophical ideas, factual ideas presented at a particular context of time, that we say is political theory. So, it is a systematic study. Any doubt in this part? So, tomorrow we will take up the concept of that certain Western political thought, how to read Western political thought. So, when you want to read Western political thought, we have to read about political institutions, political procedures, ideas and realism, political idealism, political realism. So, you know Plato is political ideal, Aristotle is real. What is the difference between ideal and real? Now, ideal you want to tell, we can say ideally you can say your car in test drive, it will give 20 kilometers mileage, but in real when you drive in traffic it will only give 14 kilometers. So, ideal is something which you expect this should be, real is something which is practical. You will tell I want to score 450 sir in political science, yeah, ideally you can do, but really you have to go by facts that how much they are scoring, because 400 is too much. Ideally you can tell sir I want to score, why it is not possible, it is possible. So, that is what. So, Plato was like that, he was ideal, Aristotle was real, he told practically what can be possible that we can. That is why I say he went on to give a practical state, but it does not mean his ideas are not criticized, even his ideas are also criticized. That is why I told this is a, we will use the word polemic, okay, many of you would heard or not, polemic. Polemic means it is a method of critically analyzing an idea which has been presented. What do you mean by critical analyzing? You are going to bring what are the shortcomings of those ideas and try to develop that idea further. So, if you see the whole Western political thought, it is a polemic thought. What is that? Meaning that one thinker has given an idea, that idea has been criticized by one more thinker, his idea has been criticized by another thinker. So, that is how it has continued, and that is why what I told, Western political thought is based on history. It is like a history book which does not have an ending chapter, does not have a closure chapter. Understood? Any doubt in this part? Yeah, you can say that. An idea which has been over a period of time accepted as largely by a large section of population, you can say it becomes. No, political theory is the study of it, okay. So, political theory will have philosophy and science, but we are going to study it systematically, how this idea developed, why this over a period of time this idea became dominant. That. So, political theory is the study. Studying what? Studying philosophy and science. That is what we say. Yes, yes, it is an hypothesis. You can say when you are able to provide evidence for that hypothesis. Facts, yeah. So, for Plato you cannot produce evidence for his hypothesis. That's yeah, that is what you told correctly. It's an hypothesis what you have done. Hypothesis means a proposition what you have laid out. Like when you do a research, you start with a hypothesis. Okay, you can start a research by saying that if countries follow communism, there will be more equality. That is your hypothesis. You have to make that study. For that study, first you have to take the sample size. You have to tell, okay, which countries you are going to take. Okay, when you do a research, when you do a scientific research, that is why there are two types of research, quantitative and qualitative. Quantitative, not much on facts and data, which cannot be quantified. Qualitative research. Quantitative research which can be quantified means you have to give evidence for it, you have to place it facts, right? Based on that you have to prove, okay, because of this is happening, cause and effect. See, now you will tell, by joining inside PSIR I got 300, that is your hypothesis, that is a claim. Now that you have to prove now, before how much you are scoring, after writing test did you improve, maybe you have scored 300 because of your own talent, there was just a coincidence. So, when we say a theory, that event should happen at multiple places, you need to be able to summarize and tell, okay, this is happening because of this, that is a theory. Now there might be people who question that theory, they might tell your study is wrong in that regard. So if you take in geography, continental drift theory, who gave? Alfred Wagner. It's a theory, he explained, saying that all continents were what is it, Panagia or something, Pangea, then they got separated. He wanted to explain why they got separated, etc. But some show shortcomings in his theory. He never told what is the force that is pushing the theory. Again a point. So that is what we say a theory. Theory is your ability to explain a certain phenomenon, saying that why it is happening like this. So that's why I told every theory is not the perfect truth. It's an idea of a particular person trying to explain a phenomenon. So in say political theory, it's an idea of a person trying to explain a political phenomenon. Those theories can be criticized. Like Marx, you take. He spoke about communism. He tried to explain in a context when capitalism rose, what are the negative effects of capitalism. Then he went on to tell what will happen when capitalism grows, how communism will be formed. But there is critics also. Many people will question, okay, why then we have not achieved your end goal. End goal is that he told we will achieve a stateless and a classless society. Why it has not happened in Russia? Why it has not happened in China? State is very strong now in Russia and China. Understand? So theory does not mean it is the absolute truth. It's an explanation of a political thing. They're trying to explain it. So you can present your theory scientifically, you can present your theory philosophically. Understood? Any? I don't know. For example, Hobbes told how state was created. State is how it is created. He told people signed a contract, they created a state. That we don't call it as a philosophy. There is nothing philosophical about it. It's just an idea, it's just an explanation saying that how state was created. So that's what I told. Every idea does not become a philosophy, or every thought does not become a philosophy. It's just a thought. Some people told state was created by God. Who created state? There is a theory which says that God created state. Some people told who created state? Men only created state. They signed an agreement between them that we need a state. So Hobbes was one person who told that. So that's not a philosophy, that's just a thought. But what Buddha told, it was a thought, but it went on to become a philosophy. So that's the difference. Okay, generally if you take, there are many, you have a philosophy of life. Karma is a philosophy. If you do good things will happen to you. But that is not a political philosophy. That's more of general philosophy. So here we are more interested in what? Political philosophies, political ideas. Okay, that is why Plato is a philosopher in that regard. So tomorrow we will be taking up the features of Western political thought. Then we will start with Socrates, because to understand Plato you need to understand Socrates. What were the ideas presented by Socrates, how Socrates influenced Plato. We don't know, every political thinker is a child of his times. So Plato was also shaped his ideas based on the conditions of Athens. Socrates was one person who had a deep influence on shaping Plato's ideas, because he was his student in that regard. So once we understand Socrates, you will understand what was the influence he had on Plato, the time period of Plato. Then we will go into the ideas presented by Plato. Then we will go into the criticism. Next scholar is what? Aristotle. He is the biggest critic of Plato. See, relation between Plato and Aristotle is such that he is his student, favorite student, but he is also the critic of Plato. And that is what we say. Plato, when you are very young, you are a radical. Like when you are at young age, you are very radical, you can imagine you will do many things. But as you age, you will become more mature. They say the same thing with Plato. If you read Plato's first book, Republic, you will find Plato too radical in that regard. These ideas what he told, remove family, remove private property. But by the time he wrote his third book, that is called as the Laws, here he wrote it after being criticized by Aristotle, and he became more practical. In Laws he changed certain ideas, made those ideas more practical. So that is why age of the scholar will also take into the account. Okay. That is what we also have to think. If Plato belonged to a different time, to a different country, to a different region, maybe his ideas would have been different. So that is what. Understood? That is what we mean by a thought. That is why thought belongs to a particular age, a particular time period with it emerged. Understood? So political thought also does not mean it is idea of one scholar. When we say Western political thought, it is a collection of ideas presented during a specific time period by scholars. Understood? So as we are told, understand the concept well, rest you can write easily once you go through the notes. But in class you need to understand the concept and you ask any doubt, any kind of doubt here, because it will be a two-way effort. It is not that I will also know everything. Maybe I would have not thought in one direction, that a person might think in other direction. So that is what we say dialectics. Plato used dialectics. What is dialectics? Socrates started that method. He told the best way to arrive at truth is always through discussions, and that is what we say in a democracy. Why there should be discussion? It's only it will help you to come to truth, because we say in everybody's argument there is some truth, there is some false. So when debates happen, when discussions happen, it is beneficial for both people because we will be able to exchange ideas, we will be able to arrive closer to the truth. Remember? So I present an idea, that is thesis. Now you might tell, no, I do not agree with this idea, it is antithesis. Then we have to synthesize. Synthesis will be always more purer than both the thesis and antithesis. See, for example, when we read Plato's theory of justice, okay, Plato tries to make you understand justice through dialogues between characters. That is how Socrates told, if you want to arrive at something, if you want to know something, start questioning, raise a question, that person should answer, then you have to ask a question. So he started, what is justice? One fellow told, justice is giving back what one's due is. Means if you have borrowed something from somebody, you have to give it back to them. That is justice. For that, Plato said, Plato created a character called as Socrates. He was speaking through Socrates. Socrates was dead. He created a character called as Socrates and he was speaking. So Socrates said, he told no, that is not justice. This was told why that is not justice. No, it will not satisfy all situations. He told, prove me wrong. So he told, okay, think you have a friend, you have a close friend. He has given you a weapon, a dangerous weapon. It's his, he has given it to you. So I told, I am going out of station, I will come back. Return it to me back once I come back. So he went, he came back. But when he came back, you realize that he has lost his mental health. He has become mad. Now the question he will tell, will you give back that weapon to him? It is his. The answer is no. So he will tell, then giving back one's due is not justice. You are understanding? That is how they will arrive at a conclusion. That is what we call as dialectics. Through dialogues you try to arrive at the truth. Because Socrates didn't believe in, he told whatever you see that is not the reality. We have to arrive at the reality. To arrive at the reality we have to have knowledge. Knowledge will help you to take you closer to reality. And that is how can knowledge develop? Through discussions, through debates, we will be able to. So when we reach a point where both of us will agree, that is where the dialogue will end, that we have arrived at something which is acceptable. The whole subject is like that, dialectics. So for every argument there will be a counter argument. If there is a Ram, there is a Ravan. If there is day, there is night. For the moment. So that is what we say dialectics. So tomorrow we will go into that, how the ideas of Plato.